that's just what I want to put across to Bundeep Singh Rangar, who's joining us on the phone line from Canada. He's, of course, Chairman, IndusView Advisors. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Rangar. Now, the first point I want to ask you about is just that. The fact that Indian companies were looking to go global in a very big way in the telecom space, this was sort of the ideal candidate to do it for them. Does this put a bit of a black spot, in a sense, on these Indian companies and their ambitions?
Hi, thanks. I don't think this puts a black spot. I think M&A deals are notoriously fickle. And deals may seem, very ready at 1 minute, and the very next minute they may be off, and vice versa. So I wouldn't even rule out the possibility of a Reliance MTN merger, down the line. I think maybe it's temporarily out. But, we could look back at this 2 years from now and think that that was a false positive.
Right, but to take that point a little bit forward, the fact that Arijit was making about, perhaps MTN then goes off the radar, even if, let's assume it does go off the radar for RCom, there could be other candidates, but none of them would have the kind of scale or the kind of scope that MTN offered.
That is probably true. The thing to point out, though, in this situation is that the expansion of Indian companies to international markets is going to be largely in emerging markets. And while Africa has great potential, and MTN certainly has a lot of clout in Southern Africa, there are other candidates in South America and Brazil. There's candidates in the Middle East. There's candidates certainly in Russia and Eastern Europe. And I think that's where you'll find some of Indian telecom companies' ambitions being realized.
Right. I'm going to request you to stay with us. I want to quickly take our viewers through the timeline of this entire process before we progress any further. Just want to run them through what this deal has looked like. Now, let's not forget that Bharti was the first company that first initiated talks with MTN. It all looked like it was all going to go through, and then suddenly things changed there, and that's when RCom quickly stepped into the picture. So just to run you through the entire timeline, it was the 24th of May that Bharti actually called off talks with MTN, and in very quick time, like I said, in just 2 days' time, RCom comes in and informs the exchange that it is talking to MTN. On the 26th of May, there was the exclusivity agreement. That's what we've been talking about. Now, remember, this period expired. It was again extended by 2 weeks. And in the middle of all this, it was on the 12th of June that RIL stepped into the picture and played spoiler, in a sense, by actually bringing up the matter of refusal, the right of first refusal. 14th June is when RCom said it actually got the letter. Now, remember, there's a little bit of a technicality here, because the whole point being that RCom alleges that it was actually RIL was informing MTN first before even coming and talking to RCom. So that's when the contentious issue really began. And then, of course, the MTN AGM concluded peacefully. MTN decided to stay out of the controversy, but now we find that the exclusivity period, of course, has lapsed. Let's also now bring in Arijit Burman, who's joining us from Mumbai. Arijit, in all of this, MTN, let's quickly bring in a point on that company. In a sense, two failed deals. So what happens really to MTN at this stage? Will it even be looking to try and recover things with any other Indian player at this stage?
Well, another Indian player at this point, Siddharth, looks very unlikely. You need deep pockets to conclude such a M&A transaction. Remember, this was a mega deal in the telecom space. In India, I mean, of course, Bharti led the race. Then Bharti, it didn't work out with them. And then MTN started talking to RCom. These are the two big ticket investors, of course. MTN, for quite some time, Siddharth, has been looking at buyers. They needed money. But remember, there are certain clauses vis-a-vis mergers and acquisitions in South Africa, which is why in the very first place the Bharti deal could not conclude. To begin with, you cannot buy a company 100%. You have to rope in the local black population. They need to be a key stakeholder in any M&A transaction in South Africa, which is a key deterrent, according to some, because when you're trying to buy into a company, you're of course paying a premium. Now, if you're paying a premium, then why would you want other stakeholders to remain in the company? Also, Siddharth, the existing management in MTN, they clearly have political ambitions. Some people would even go on to say that the current CEO of MTN sees himself as the future president or the president of South Africa. Now, for him to actually sell MTN entirely would also be a political suicide, would be very disastrous for his own career. Some people would even go to the extent of saying so, which is why this deal was a delicate one. If you see the fundamental difference between the Bharti deal and the Arcom deal, Siddharth, the Bharti deal was an outright acquisition, but Arcom or Anil Ambani here was talking about a reverse merger, by which Anil Ambani would be a principal shareholder in the combined entity. He was not talking about buying out a company, which is why many people were surprised at the very strategy adopted by Reliance. Reliance is not known for partnering. They are known more for aggressive acquirers of assets, right, international and national. But here, after a long time, Anil Ambani was actually talking about partnership and even being a minor player in the bigger scheme of things. But then, as I told you, MTN is not just a corporate entity, it is an entity which has political affiliations as well. So these and for an MTN management to inadvertently get embroiled in a legal battle, that would have been extremely dangerous.
Extremely dangerous indeed. Arijit, that's an interesting point. But Shivnath Thukral, let me come back to you very quickly. This also puts, in a sense, the ADA group or Anil Ambani on the back foot. But at the same time, as we know from the past, we expect the two brothers to sort of go after each other, perhaps even stronger. Can Arcom at this stage, put the Mukesh Ambani team or the camp on the back foot and say that, all right, let's have an offer from you?
Well, that's an interesting one. So that could be a googly for even Mukesh Ambani's side. I don't think that's going to happen, given the way the entire pitch between the two brothers has been heightened in the light of the political scenario we've seen. Amar Singh and company stepping up the heat. What you could see adversely, though, is Anil Ambani trying to do everything to go after Mukesh Ambani. Next week is a crucial one. The gas hearing, the gas pricing issue comes up in the Bombay High Court. So that is where you could see a lot of action, although it's in the courtroom, so you don't really see anybody benefiting right away. But yes, there will be points of confrontation now, and the points of confrontation, according to what I have understood the family agreement, is trying to getting into areas where they both decided not to compete against each other. We heard that Mukesh Ambani doesn't mind getting into financial services. Of course, he doesn't mind getting into telecommunication as well. But yes, Anil Ambani has the ability of throwing a googly at him saying, come and buy me out. But that is not going to happen. The reason is this, because it is pretty much clear that Anil Ambani right now wants to achieve a global scale and size. But one thing you'll have to remember, in the fight between the two brothers, every day is a new front. I can tell you the entire machinery within both the groups are overactive and hyperactive, trying to open up new wounds, new war fronts, and trying to take this to a new level altogether. What complicates the matter, Siddharth, as you rightly said, is the political environment right now, which is quite charged up. One just fears that this doesn't get heightened at the same time when the UPA government is under pressure to do something. So, as I said, it could get nasty, it could get messier from here on. It certainly is not going to quieten down between Mukesh Ambani and Anil Ambani.
And that keeps all of us on the edge of our seats, that's for sure. But we're going to take this forward. Very quickly, let me get one last point in with Mr. Rangar. If you can just run us through the fact that we've all been talking about how Anil Ambani has had this big global ambition. Now, does something like this dent that majorly? Does this sort of scar those ambitions for at least some time to come?
I think so, because the feud between the two brothers was one where either they were trying to get an economic value on that right of first refusal, in some ways an option price that they were trying to exercise, or was it purely aimed at scuttling the potential deal with MTN? And I think the answer lies in the latter. So to some degree, this is the war of Indian roses, if you may. And in a situation like this, it's not rationality that prevails. It is purely personal grievances and various other ambitions that come into play, and egos come into play. So I think in the short term, sure, this affects ambitions politically otherwise, but hard to say how this will pan out in the long run, because a war of attrition, nobody really wins.
Right, well, we do know we can never write him off, that's for sure. But thanks for sharing your views with us. We appreciate your time and joining us here on NDTV Profit.